Welcome back my students, Dr. Ugvi here, and today we are studying learning objective number 2 from chapter 30 Guyton physiology, that's properties of cardiac muscles, and we are studying the structural and functional differences between cardiac, skeletal and smooth muscles. No need to write anything, my handwritten notes are in the description of this video. So we are studying structural differences between skeletal, cardiac and smooth muscles. Difference number first, skeletal muscles are striated muscles. Cardiac muscles are also striated muscles, while as smooth muscles are not striated. What do you mean by striated? In some muscle fibers, there is a presence of a dark band, then there is a presence of light band, then there is presence of another dark band, then there is presence of another light band. This alternate presence of dark, then light, then dark and light band give that muscle fiber a striated appearance. So in all those muscle fibers where there is this pattern, those muscle fibers are striated, that is skeletal and cardiac. Clear? These dark bands are also known as A bands, while as these light bands are also known as I bands. Now I will show you the meaning of striated diagrammatically from Guyton. This right here is a muscle, skeletal muscle. Clear? And from the skeletal muscle we take out one myofibril, and when we look this myofibril on an electron microscope, we see there is a presence of A band, then I band, then another A band, then another I band. This alternate presence of A band and I band give the skeletal myofibril a striated appearance, and this striated appearance is hence seen in cardiac and skeletal muscles and not in smooth muscles. Clear? Now moving on to the difference number 2. These dark and light bands, they are made up of myofilaments, which are actin and myosin. So actin and myosin are the myofilaments which make up these dark and light bands. These myofilaments are orderly arranged in skeletal muscles. They are orderly arranged in cardiac muscles, but they are not orderly arranged in smooth muscles. They are scattered. Because these myofilaments make up these dark and light bands. To have a striated pattern, these myofilaments need to be in orderly arrangement, because only then they will get a striated appearance. That's why myofilaments are orderly in skeletal and cardiac, while as scattered in smooth muscles. Now moving on to the difference number 3, that is T-tubules. T-tubules are seen in skeletal muscles, T-tubules are seen in cardiac muscles, but T-tubules are not seen in smooth muscles. Now the question arises, what are these T-tubules? I will show you T-tubules diagrammatically from Guyton physiology. This right here is a diagram of a cardiac muscle cell. And you can see here this sarcolemma is the plasma membrane of this cardiac muscle cell, and in some places this plasma membrane dips down. When it dips down, it forms a pit-like structure, and that pit-like structure is a T-tubule. So T-tubules are the dips in the plasma membrane of a cardiac muscle cell. Clear? So these T-tubules, these dips are seen in skeletal muscle cells. They are seen in cardiac muscle cells, but these dips are not seen in smooth muscle cells. So this is the difference number 3. Now moving on to the difference number 4. Let us suppose this is one skeletal muscle cell and this is another skeletal muscle cell, adjacent skeletal muscle cells. They have no intercellular connections. So two cells are not connected intercellularly. Clear? Number 4, let us suppose this is one cardiac muscle cell and this is another cardiac muscle cell. Two cardiac muscle cells are connected at a zigzag pattern that is known as intercalated discs. Now let us suppose this is one smooth muscle cell and this is its adjacent smooth muscle cell. The two adjacent smooth muscle cells are connected by gap junctions. So what is our difference number 4? There is presence of gap junctions between adjacent smooth muscle cells. There is presence of intercalated discs between adjacent cardiac muscle cells, and there is no connection between adjacent skeletal muscle cells. To know more about these intercalated discs, watch my video 9th from cardiovascular system, and to know more about the striated pattern, watch my video 8th from cardiovascular system. Now moving on. Now we will talk about the types of skeletal muscle cell. There are two types of skeletal muscle cell, slow and fast. There are no subtypes of cardiac muscle cell because we have only one heart, so we will talk of no types. While as smooth muscle cells, they are of two types. Number one is called a unitary smooth muscle cells. Another is called a multi-unit smooth muscles. Now we will see the difference between the two. These unitary smooth muscle cells, they behave like a single unit. Why they behave like a single unit? Because of the presence of gap junctions. That's why they are called unitary smooth muscles or single unit smooth muscles. Clear? So why are they called single unit smooth muscles? Because there is presence of gap junctions between the adjacent cells. Where are they seen? They are seen in GIT. They are seen in uterus. They are seen in urinary bladder. They are seen in ureter. Is that clear? Now we will talk about multi-unit smooth muscle cells. They do not behave like a single unit. So they don't behave like a single unit. Gap junctions are absent between these cells, so they do not behave like a single unit. They are also known as vascular smooth muscles. As they are known as vascular smooth muscles, which implies they are seen in blood vessels. So this is the two types of smooth muscles, that is unitary smooth muscles in which there is presence of gap junctions, and multi-unit smooth muscles in which there is absence of gap junctions. These are my notes. You will find these notes in my Telegram channel, structural differences between skeletal, smooth and cardiac muscles, and also we talked about types of smooth muscles, gap junctions present, single unit smooth muscles, and gap junctions absent, multi-unit smooth muscles. Now moving on to the types of skeletal muscles. We have slow skeletal muscles and we have fast skeletal muscles. Slow skeletal muscles are called slow because they contract and relax slowly, while as fast skeletal muscles, they contract and relax fast. Is that clear? These slow skeletal muscles, they are also known as type 1 skeletal fibers, while as these fast skeletal muscles, they are also known as type 2 skeletal muscle fibers. And this type 2 skeletal muscle fibers, they are further divided into type 2A skeletal muscle fibers and type 2B skeletal muscle fibers. Is that clear? So skeletal muscle fibers, they are slow because they contract and relax slowly, so they are type 1. They are also a fast type, that is, they contract and relax fastly. They are also called type 2 skeletal muscle fibers. This type 2 is further divided into type 2A and type 2B. Now we will see the difference between type 1, type 2A and type 2B skeletal muscle fibers. Clear? These type 1 skeletal muscle fibers, they are best used while sitting. When we sit, the muscles used are type 1. The type 2A skeletal muscle fibers, they are used while standing. Clear? And type 2B are used while running. Clear? Type 1 muscle fibers, they are small sized, while as type 2A are large sized fibers and type 2B are also large sized fibers. Clear? Type 1 skeletal muscle fibers, they are red in color. They are red in color because of a presence of pigment that's called myoglobin. Type 2A are also red in color because of the presence of pigment myoglobin. Type 2B fibers, they are white in color. Why are they white in color? Because of the absence of myoglobin. Is that clear? Now moving on to the difference number 4th. Type 1 fibers, they can store oxygen. As they can store oxygen, they undergo aerobic metabolism. Type 2A fibers, they can also store oxygen, so they also undergo aerobic metabolism. While as type 2B fibers, they cannot store oxygen, so they undergo anaerobic metabolism. Clear? And what is anaerobic metabolism? Example, glycolysis. So they undergo glycolysis. Clear? And due to glycolysis, there is an accumulation of lactate. Clear? Glycolysis. And due to glycolysis, there is accumulation of lactate or lactic acid. Clear? So type 1 fibers, they can store oxygen, they undergo aerobic metabolism. Type 2A fibers, they can also store oxygen, they undergo aerobic metabolism. And type 2B fibers, they cannot store oxygen, so they undergo anaerobic metabolism in the form of glycolysis, which results in the formation of lactate. Clear? Now moving forward. These type 2A fibers, they can sometimes also undergo an aerobic metabolism. Sometimes, but mostly they undergo aerobic metabolism. Now we have the difference number last. As they undergo aerobic metabolism, type 1 fibers are fatigue resistant. That means they do not get fatigued, they do not get tired. We sit for a long time without getting tired. Similarly, type 2A fibers, they are fatigue resistant. They are also fatigue resistant. While as type 2B fibers, they are fatigue prone. They get tired quickly. We run. We cannot run for a long time. We get tired. Why do we get tired? Because muscles undergo glycolysis, muscles undergo anaerobic metabolism, and there is accumulation of lactate. And this lactate sets fatigue faster. So type 2B fibers are fatigue prone. Clear? So that's what we talked about here. These are my notes. Types of skeletal muscle fibers, type 1 and type 2. Then we have type 2A and type 2B. And this is the difference. You can find these notes in my Telegram channel. Clear? So these were the 5 structural differences between skeletal, cardiac and smooth muscles. Now we will move on to the next topic. That is functional differences. Functional differences between skeletal, smooth and cardiac muscles. Is that clear? Let us suppose this right here is a skeletal muscle cell. For this skeletal muscle cell to contract, it needs calcium. But where is this calcium coming from? This calcium comes from sarcoplasmic reticulum, which is present inside of the cell. Clear? So this calcium comes from intracellularly. So for the contraction of the skeletal muscle fiber or skeletal muscle cell, it needs calcium, and that calcium is coming from intracellularly from sarcoplasmic reticulum. Clear? Now let's suppose this cardiac muscle cell has to contract. It also needs calcium. So for any muscle to contract, it needs calcium. This calcium comes from same sarcoplasmic reticulum, that is intracellularly. Let us suppose this is now a cardiac muscle cell. Intracellularly. But some calcium comes from extracellular fluid. So for a cardiac muscle to contract, it needs 2 calciums, one from intracellular sarcoplasmic reticulum and other from extracellular fluid. Clear? Similarly, in smooth muscles, if it has to contract, it needs calcium, and that calcium comes from two sources. Number first is sarcoplasmic reticulum, which is intracellular source, and number second is extracellular fluid. Clear? Now I will show you this statement diagrammatically. Let us suppose, as you can see in the diagram, this is a cardiac muscle cell, and you can see here inside the cytoplasm is a sarcoplasmic reticulum. It gives calcium and some other calcium that is coming from extracellular fluid. These 2 calciums combine, both these calciums give calcium spark, they give calcium signal, which results in the contraction of a cardiac muscle cell. So what we say, for the contraction of a cardiac muscle cell or cardiac muscle, it needs 2 calciums. One calcium is coming from extracellular fluid that I showed you diagrammatically, and some calcium comes from intracellular fluid. Clear? This question was previously asked in INICET 2 years back, that for a cardiac muscle to contract, it needs extracellular as well as intracellular calcium, while as for a skeletal muscle to contract, it needs only intracellular calcium from sarcoplasmic reticulum. So this is the difference number first. Clear? Now moving on to the difference number second. Skeletal muscles, we run, we sit, we walk, we get tired. So what we say, fatigue, susceptibility to fatigue is high. That means skeletal muscles get fatigued quickly, while as smooth muscles are fatigue resistant. Smooth muscles are fatigue resistant. Our GIT, our urinary bladder, they keep on functioning for our whole life without getting tired, so they are fatigue resistant. Similarly, cardiac muscles, our heart keeps on pumping blood for whole life without getting tired, so we say cardiac muscle is also fatigue resistant. So this is the functional difference number second. Now we'll move on to the functional difference number third. If we give rapid multiple stimuli, if we give very much stimulus to a skeletal muscle, it will result in tetanization. What is this tetanization? This tetanization means rapid spasms or wild contractions. So if we give very much stimulus to a skeletal muscle cell, it will result in tetanization. What is tetanization? It is rapid spasms or wild contractions. But these tetanizations do not occur in smooth muscles. So tetanization do not occur in smooth muscles, and cardiac muscles. In cardiac muscles, tetanization also does not occur. Clear? So what do we say? Tetanization occur in skeletal muscles, but tetanization cannot occur in smooth, and tetanization cannot occur in cardiac muscles. So this is difference number 3rd. Now moving on to the difference number 4th. Let us suppose this is a skeletal muscle cell. If we put one electrode inside the plasma membrane of the skeletal muscle cell and another electrode outside of the plasma membrane of the skeletal muscle cell, then we measure the voltage changes on this membrane. Those voltage changes are called action potentials. Those voltage changes are called action potentials. Clear? If this is the membrane of a cardiac muscle cell, then these voltage changes are called the action potentials of a cardiac muscle cell. Clear? Now this action potential, the duration of this action potential in skeletal muscles is 5 milliseconds. Clear? And the duration of action potential in smooth muscles is very much, that is 300 milliseconds. And the duration of action potential in cardiac muscle cell is variable. It varies from 10 milliseconds to a very high value. So the duration of action potential in skeletal muscles is 5 milliseconds. The duration of action potential in smooth muscles is 300 milliseconds. And the duration of action potential in cardiac muscles is very variable. That is from 10 milliseconds to very high value. Clear? And another point, in skeletal muscle cell, there is no plateau. There is no plateau phase of action potential. In smooth muscles, there is a plateau phase of action potential. And in cardiac action potential, there is a plateau phase present. So plateau phase of action potential is seen in cardiac and smooth muscles, but this plateau phase is not seen in action potential of a skeletal muscles. Now what is this plateau phase? To know more about this plateau phase, you can watch my video 12th from cardiovascular system. And what is a plateau phase? It is a straight line in an action potential. Clear? So these are the 4 functional differences between skeletal, smooth and cardiac muscles. And these are the notes. 4 functional differences between skeletal, smooth and cardiac muscles. And at last, there are 2 regulatory differences between these muscles. That is, if we give nerve stimulation to a skeletal muscle, it will result in excitation. That is, it will contract. Clear? If we give nerve stimulation, skeletal muscle will contract. That means it will excite. But if we give nerve stimulation to a smooth muscle, it will either excite or it will inhibit. Clear? Similarly, if we give a nerve stimulation to a cardiac muscle cell or cardiac muscle, it will either excite or it will either inhibit. It will excite if it was sympathetic nerve stimulation, and it will inhibit if it was parasympathetic nerve stimulation. Clear? And response to hormones is small in skeletal muscles. Response to hormones is very large in smooth muscles, and a large response to hormones is seen in cardiac muscles. So response to hormones is large in smooth and cardiac muscles and very small in skeletal muscles. So this is the difference between skeletal, cardiac and smooth muscles. Revise this video. Class dismissed. Thank you very much.